He had been roller skating when Kenny Leggett, an older boy from across the street who later became a 5-minute miler, a county conference marvel, but that was later. This day he was just a bigger boy who had hit Rabbit with an icy snowball that winter. Could have taken out an eye if it had hit higher. This day he just tossed across Jackson Road the shout, "Harry, did you hear on the radio? The president is dead." He said, the president, not Roosevelt. There had been no other president for them. The next time this would happen, the president would have a name. As he sat at the deafening tall machine one Friday after lunch, his father sneaked up behind him and confided, "Harry, it just came over the radio. Engraving had it on. Kennedy's been shot. They think in the head." Both men dead of violent headaches. Their smiles fade in the field of stars. We grope on under bullies and accountants. On the bus, Rabbit prays as his mother told him to do. Make the L-Dopa work. Give her pleasanter dreams. Keep Nelson more or less pure. Don't let Stavros turn too hard on Janice. Help Jill find her way home. Keep Pop healthy. Me too. Amen. The bus goes around the side of the mountain. The gas station with the day-glow spinners, the distance-hazed viaduct in the valley. He waits to change from the 16A bus to the 12 in the doorway of the roasted peanut place on Weiser. "Pig atrocities stir Camden," a headline in the rack reads. The bus comes and pulls him across the bridge. The day whines at the windows, a September brightness empty of a future. The lawns smitten flat, the black river listless and stinking. Hobby heaven, Butch, Xd, and Kid. He walks down Emberley toward Vista Crescent among sprinklers twirling in unison, under television aerials raking the same 4 o'clock garbage from the sky. The dirty white Porsche is in the driveway, halfway into the garage, the way Janice used to do it, annoyingly. Jill is in the brown armchair in her slip. From the slumped way she sits, he sees she has no underpants on. She answers his questions groggily, with a lag, as if they are coming to her through a packing of dirty cotton, of fuzzy memories accumulated this day. "Where'd you go so early this morning?" "Out. Away from creeps like you." "You dropped the kid off?" "Sure." "When'd you get back?" "Just now." "Where'd you spend all day?" "Maybe I went to Valley Forge anyway." "Maybe you didn't." "I did." "How was it?" "Beautiful. A gas, actually. He was a beautiful dude." "Describe one room." "You go in a door, and there's a 4-poster bed and a little tasseled pillow, and on it says George Washington slept here. On the bedside tables you can still see the pills he took to make himself sleep, when the redcoats had got him all uptight. The walls have some kind of linen-y stuff on them, and all the chairs have ropes across the arms so you can't sit down on them. That's why I'm sitting on this one, because it didn't, okay?" He hesitates among the many alternatives she seems to be presenting. Laughter, anger, battle, surrender. "Okay, sounds interesting. I'm sorry we couldn't go." "Where did you go?" "I went to visit my mother after doing the housework around here." "How is she?" "She talks better, but seems frailer." "I'm sorry. I'm sorry she has that disease. I guess I'll never meet your mother, will I?" "Do you want to?" "You can see my father any time you want. Just be in the Phoenix Bar at 4:15. You'd like him. He cares about politics. He thinks the system is shit." "And I'll never meet your wife." "Why would you want to? What is this?" "I don't know. I'm interested. Maybe I'm falling for you." "Jesus, don't do that." "You don't think much of yourself, do you?" "Once the basketball stopped, I suppose not. My mother, by the way, told me I should let Janice screw herself and leave town." "What'd you say to that?" "I said I couldn't." "You're a creep." Her lack of underpants and his sense that she has already been used today and his sense of this unique summer, this summer of the moon, slipping away forever, lead him to ask, blushing for the second time this afternoon, "You wouldn't want to make love, would you?" "Fuck or suck?" "Whichever. Fuck." For he has come to feel that she gives him the end of her with teeth in it, as a way of keeping the other for some man not yet arrived, some man more real to her than himself. "What about Nelson?" she asks. "He's off with Janice. She may keep him for supper. He's no threat. But maybe you're too tired from all that George Washington." Jill stands and pulls her slip to her shoulder and holds it there. A crumpled bag containing her head, her young body all there below, pale as a candlestick, the breast's hardened drippings. "Fuck me," she says coolly, tossing her slip toward the kitchen, and when under him and striving, continues, "I want you to fuck all the shit out of me, all the shit and dreariness of this shit-dreary world. Hurt me, clean me out. I want you to be all of my insides, sweetheart, right up to my throat. Yes, oh yes, bigger, more. Shoot it all out of me, sweet, oh sweet, sweet creep." Her eyes dilate in surprise. This green is just a rim around pupils whose pure black is muddied with his shadow. You've gotten little. It is true. All her talk, her wild wanting it, have scared him down to nothing. She is too wet. Something has enlarged her, and the waxen solidity of her young body, her buttocks' spheres too perfect, feels alien to him. He grasps her across a distance clouded with Mom's dry, warm bones and Janice's dark curves, Janice's ribs crescent above where the waist dipped. He senses winds playing through his nerve ends, feels her moved by something beyond him, of which he is only a shadow of white, his chest a radiant shield crushing her. She disengages herself and kneels to tongue his belly. They play with each other in a fog. The furniture dims around them. They are on the scratchy carpet, the television screen a mother planet above them. Her hair is in his mouth. Her ass is two humps under his eyes. She tries to come against his face, but his tongue isn't that strong. She rubs her clitoris against his chin, upside down until he hurts. Elsewhere she is nibbling him. He feels gutted, silly, limp. At last he asks her to drag her breasts, the tough little tips, across his genitals, that lie cradled at the join of his legs. In this way he arouses himself and attempts to satisfy her, and does, though by the time she trembles and comes, they are crying over secrets far at their backs, in opposite directions, Moonchild and Earthman. "I love you," he says, and the fact that he doesn't makes it true. She is sitting on him, still working like some angry mechanic who, having made a difficult fit, keeps testing it. In the small slipping sound they make, he hears their mixed liquids, imagines in the space of her belly a silver machine, spider-shaped, spun from the threads of their secretions, carefully spinning. This links them. He says, surrendering, "Oh, cry, do." He pulls her down to him, puts their cheeks together so their tears will mix. Jill asks him, "Why are you crying? Why are you?" "Because the world is so shitty and I'm part of it." "Do you think there's a better one?" "There must be." "Well," he considers, "why not?" By the time Nelson comes home, they have both taken baths, their clothes are on, the lights are on. Rabbit is watching the 6 o'clock news, the roundup tally on summer riots, the week's kill figures in Vietnam, the estimate of traffic accidents over the coming Labor Day weekend, and Jill is making lentil soup in the kitchen. Nelson spreads over the floor and furniture the unwrapped loot of his day with Janice. Snappy new jockey shorts, 2 pairs of slacks, 4 sports shirts, a corduroy jacket, wide neckties, even cufflinks to go with a lavender dress shirt, not to mention new loafers and basketball sneakers. Jill admires. "Groovy, groovy or grooviest. Nelson, I just pity those 8th grade girls. They'll be at your mercy." He looks at her anxiously. "You know it's square. I didn't want to. Mom made me. The stores were disgusting, all full of materialism." "What stores did she go to?" Rabbit asked. "How the hell did she pay for all this junk?" "She opened charge accounts everywhere, Dad. She bought herself some clothes, too. A really neat thing that looks like pajamas, only it's okay to wear to parties if you're a woman and stuff like that. And I got a suit, kind of gray-green with checks, really cool, that we can pick up in a week when they make the alterations. Doesn't it feel funny when they measure you? Do you remember who was the name on the accounts, me or Springer?" Jill, for a joke, has put on one of his new shirts and tied her hair in a tail behind with one of his wide new neckties. To show herself off, she twirls. Nelson, entranced, can scarcely speak. At her mercy. "The name on her driver's license, Dad, isn't that the right one? And the address here? All those bills are going to come here? Whatever's on the driver's license, Dad. Don't go heavy on me. I told her I just wanted blue jeans and a Che Guevara sweatshirt, only there aren't any in Brewer." Jill laughs. "Nelson, you'll be the best-dressed radical at West Brewer Junior High. Harry, these neckties are silk." "So it's war." "Dad, don't. It wasn't my fault." "I know that. Forget it. You needed the clothes. You're growing. And Mom really looked neat in some of the dresses." He goes to the window rather than continue to be heavy on the kid. He sees his own car, the old Falcon, slowly pull out. He sees for a second the shadow of Janice's head, the way she sits at the wheel hunched over. You'd think she'd be more relaxed with cars, having grown up with them. She had been waiting. For what? For him to come out? Or was she just looking at the house, maybe to spot Jill? Or homesick? By a tug of tension in one cheek, he recognizes himself as smiling, seeing that the flag decal is still on the back window. She hasn't let Stavros scrape it off. Chapter 3. Skeeter. "We've been raped! We've been raped!" Background voice aboard Soyuz 5. One day in September, Rabbit comes home from work to find another man in the house. The man is a Negro. "What the hell," Rabbit says, standing in the front hall beside the 3 chime tubes. "Hell, man, it's revolution, right?" the young black says, not rising from the mossy brown armchair. His glasses flash 2 silver circles. His goatee is a smudge in shadow. He has let his hair grow out so much into such a big ball that Rabbit didn't recognize him at first. Jill rises, quick as smoke, from the chair with the silver threads. "You remember Skeeter? How could I forget him?" He goes forward a step, his hand lifted, ready to be shaken, the palm tingling with fear, but since Skeeter makes no move to rise, he lets it drop back to his side, unsullied. Skeeter studies the dropped white hand, exhaling smoke from a cigarette. It's a real cigarette, tobacco. "I like it," Skeeter says. "I like your hostility, Chuck. As we used to say in Nam, it's my meat." "Skeeter and I were just talking," Jill says. Her voice has changed. It is more afraid, more adult. "Don't I have any rights?" Rabbit speaks to Skeeter. "I thought you were in jail or something." "He is out on bail," Jill says too hastily. "Let him speak for himself." Wearily, Skeeter corrects her. "To be precise, I am way out on bail. I have jumped the blessed thing. I am, as they would say, desired by the local swine. I have become one hot item, right?" "It would have been 2 years, Jill says. 2 years for nothing, for not hurting anybody, not stealing anything, for nothing, Harry." "Did Babe jump bail too?" "Babe is a lady," Skeeter goes on in this tone of weary, mincing precision. "She makes friends easy, right? I have no friends. I am known far and wide for my lack of sympathetic qualities." His voice changes, becoming falsetto, cringing. "I is one bad nigger." He has many voices, Rabbit remembers, and none of them exactly his. Rabbit tells him, "They'll catch you sooner or later. Jumping bail makes it much worse. Maybe you would have gotten off with a suspended sentence. I have one of those. Officialdom gets bored with handing them out, right? How about your being a Vietnam veteran? How about it? I am also black and unemployed and surly, right? I seek to undermine the state, and old Massa's state, he cottons on." Rabbit contemplates the set of shadows in the old armchair, trying to feel his way. The chair has been with them ever since their marriage. It comes from the Springers' attic. This nightmare must pass. He says, "You talk a cool game, but I think you panicked, boy." "Don't boy me." Rabbit is startled. He had meant it neutrally, one athlete calling to another. He tries to amend. "You're just hurting yourself. Go turn yourself in. The day won't make that much difference." Skeeter stretches luxuriously in the chair, yawns, inhales, and exhales. "It dawns upon me," he says, "that you have a white gentleman's concept of the police and their exemplary works." There is nothing, let me repeat, no thing that gives them more pleasurable sensations than pulling the wings off of witless poor black men. First the fingernails, then the wings. Truly, they are constituted for that very sacred purpose, to keep me off your back and under your smelly feet, right? This isn't the South, Rabbit says. Hee-yah! Friend Chuck, have you ever considered running for political office? There can't be a county clerk left who believes the sweet things you do. The news is the South is everywhere. We are 50 miles from the Mason-Dixon line where we sit, but way up in Detroit they are shooting nigger boys like catfish in a barrel. The news is the cotton is in. Lynching season is on. In these benighted states, everybody's done become a cracker. A brown hand delicately gestures from the shadows, then droops. Forgive me, Chuck. This is just too simple for me to explain. Read the papers. I do. You're crazy. Jill horns in. The system is rotten, Harry. The laws are written to protect a tiny elite. Like people who own boats in Stonington, he says. Score one, Skeeter calls. Right? Jill flares. What of it? I ran away from it. I reject it. I shit on it, Harry. Where you're still loving it. You're eating it. You're eating my shit. My father's, everybody's. Don't you see how you're used? So now you want to use me. For him. She freezes, white. Her lips thin to nothing. Yes. You're crazy. I'd be risking jail, too. Harry, just a few nights until he can hustle up a stake. He has family in New Orleans. He'll go there. Skeeter, right? Right, sugar. Oh, so right. It isn't just the pot bust. The pigs think he's a dealer. They say he pushes. They'll crucify him. Harry, they will. Skeeter softly croons the start of that old rugged cross. Well, does he? Push? Skeeter grins under his great ball of hair. What can I get for you, Chuck? Goofballs, jolly beans, red devils, purple hearts. They have so much Panama red in Philly right now they're feeding it to the cows. I want to sniff a little skag for a real rush. From the gloom of the chair he extends his pale palms cupped as if heaped with shining poison. So he is evil. Rabbit in his childhood used to lift, out of the same curiosity that made him put his finger into his belly button and then sniff it, the metal waffle-patterned lid on the backyard cesspool around the corner of the garage from the basketball hoop. Now this black man opens up under him in the same way, a pit of scummed stench impossible to see to the bottom of. Harry turns and asks Jill, "Why are you doing this to me?" She turns her head, gives him that long-chinned profile, a medallion to wear into battle. "I was stupid," she says, "to think you might trust me. You shouldn't have said you loved me." Skeeter hums True Love, the old Crosby Grace Kelly single. Rabbit re-asks, "Why?" Skeeter rises from the chair. "Jesus, deliver me from puking uptight honky lovers. She's doing it because I've been screwing her all afternoon, right? If I go, she comes with me. Hey, Jill, honey, right?" She says again, thin-lipped, "Right." Skeeter tells her, "I wouldn't take you on a bet, you poor cock-happy bitch. Skeeter splits alone." To Rabbit he says, "Toodaloo, Chuck. Goddamn green pickles. But it's been fun to watch you squirm." Standing, Skeeter seems frail, shabby in blue Levi's and a colorless little army windbreaker from which the insignia have been unstitched. His ball of hair has shrunk his face. "Toodaloo," Rabbit agrees, with relief in his bowels, and turns his back. Skeeter declines to go so simply. He steps closer. He smells spicy. He says, "Throw me out. I want you to touch me." "I don't want to." "Do it." "I don't want to fight you." "I screwed your bitch." Her decision. "And a lousy little cunt she was, too, like putting your prick in a vice." Hear him, Jill? "Hey, Rabbit, that's what they used to call you, right? Your mama's a whore, right? She goes down on old black winos behind the railroad station for 50 cents, right? If they don't have 50 cents, she does it free because she likes it, right?" Remote mom, the quilty scent of her room, medicine, bed warmth. Of all those years when she was well, he can only remember her big bones bent above the kitchen table with its 4 worn places. She is not sitting down. She has already eaten. She is feeding him supper. He has come home from practice late. It is after dark. The windows are glazed from within. "Your daddy's a queer, right? You must be too to take all this shit. Your wife couldn't stand living with a queer. It was like being balled by a mouse, right? You're a mouse down there, hey? Ain't that right? Give me a feel." He reaches, and Rabbit bats his hand away. Skeeter dances, delighted. This book is continued on cassette number 6, side 1. Skeeter dances, delighted. "Nothing there, right? Hey, Rabbit, Jill says you believe in God. I got news for you. Your God's a pansy. Your white God's queerer than the Queen of Spades. Hey, Chuck, another thing. Ain't no Jesus. He was a faggot crook, right? They bribed the Romans to get his carcass out of the tomb 'cause it smelled so bad, right?" "All you're showing me," Rabbit says, "is how crazy you are." But a creeping sweetness, rage, is filling him solid. Sunday school images, a dead man whiter than lilies, the lavender rocks where he was betrayed by a kiss are being packed into him. Skeeter dances on. He is wearing big creased army boots. He bumps Harry's shoulder, tugs the sleeve of his white shirt. "Hey, want to know how I know? Want to know? Hey, I'm the real Jesus. I am the Black Jesus, right? There is none other, no? When I fart, lightning flashes, right? Angels scoop it up in shovels of zillion-carat gold, right? Kneel down, Chuck. Worship me. I am Jesus. Kiss my balls. They are the sun and the moon, right? And my pecker's a comet whose head is the white-hot heart of the glory that never does fail." And his head rolling like a puppet's, Skeeter unzips his fly and prepares to display this wonder. Rabbit's time has come. He is packed so solid with anger and fear he is seeing with his pores. He wades toward the boy deliciously and feels his fists vanish, one in the region of the belly, the other below the throat. He is scared of the head, whose glasses might shatter and slash. Skeeter curls up and drops to the floor, dry as a scorpion, and when Rabbit pries at him he has no opening, just abrasive angles shaking like a sandpaper machine. Rabbit's hands start to hurt. He wants to pry this creature open because there is a soft spot where he can be split and killed. The curved back is too tough, though knuckles slammed at the hole of the ear do produce a garbled whimper. Jill is screaming, and with her whole weight pulling the tail of his shirt, and in the ebb of his sweetness Rabbit discovers his hands and forearms somehow clawed. His enemy is cringing on the floor, the carpet that cost them $11 a yard and was supposed to wear longer than the softer loop for $15 that Janice wanted. She always said it reminded her of the stuff they use in miniature golf courses. Cringing expertly, knees tucked under chin and hands overhead and head tucked under the sofa as far as it will go. His Levi's are rumpled up, and it shocks Rabbit to see how skinny his calves and ankles are, iridescent, dark spindles. Humans made of a new material. Last longer, wear more evenly. And Jill is sobbing, "Harry, no more, no more." And the door chime is saying its 3 syllables over and over, a scale that can't get anywhere, that can't get over the top. The door pops open. Nelson is there in his spiffy new school clothes, fishbone-striped sports shirt and canary-yellow slacks. Billy Fosnacht is behind him, a hairier head taller. "Hey," Skeeter says from the floor, "it's Baby Chuck, right?" "Is he a burglar, Dad?" "We could hear the furniture being smashed and everything," Billy says. "We didn't know what to do." Nelson says, "We thought if we kept ringing the bell it would stop." Jill tells him, "Your father lost all control of himself." Rabbit asks, "Why should I always be the one to have control of myself?" Getting up, as if from a bin of dust, one careful limb at a time, Skeeter says, "That was to get us acquainted, Chuck. Next time I'll have a gun." Rabbit taunts, "I thought at least I'd see some nice karate chops from basic training." "Afraid to use 'em. Break you in two, right?" "Daddy, who is he?" "He's a friend of Jill's, called Skeeter. He's going to stay here a couple days." "He is?" Jill's voice has asked. Rabbit sifts himself for the reason. Small, scraped places smart on his knuckles. Overstimulation has left a residue of nausea. He notices through the haze that still softly rotates around him that the end table was upset, and that the lamp, whose base is driftwood, lies on the carpet awry but not smashed. The patient fidelity of these things bewilders him. "Sure," he says, "why not?" Skeeter studies him from the sofa, where he sits bent over, nursing the punch to his stomach. "Feeling guilty, huh, Chuck? A little tokenism to wash your sins away, right?" "Skeeter, he's being generous," Jill scolds. "Get one thing straight, Chuck. No gratitude. Anything you do, do for selfish reasons." "Right. The pleasure I get in pounding you around." But in fact he is terrified at having taken this man in. He will have to sleep with him in the house. The tint of night, Skeeter will sneak to his side with a knife shining like the moon. He will get the gun as he has promised. Fugitive from justice holds family at gunpoint. Mayor vows no deals. Why has he invited this danger? To get Janice to rescue him? These thoughts flit by in a flash. Nelson has taken a step toward the black man. His eyes are sunk in their sockets with seriousness. "Wait, wait! He is poison. He is murder. He is black." "Hi," Nelson says and holds out his hand. Skeeter puts his skinny fingers, 4 gray crayons, as thick at the tips as in the middle, in the child's hand and says, "Hi there, baby Chuck." He nods over Nelson's shoulder toward Billy Fosnacht. "Who's your gruesome friend?" And everybody laughs, even Billy, even Skeeter contributes a cackle at this unexpected illumination, that Billy is gruesome, with his father's skinny neck and big ears, and his mother's mooncalf eyes, and the livid festerings of adolescence speckling his cheeks and chin. Their laughter makes a second wave to reassure him they are not laughing at him. They are laughing in relief at the gift of truth. They are rejoicing in brotherhood at having shared this moment, giggling and cackling. The house is an egg cracking because they are all hatching together. But in bed, the house dark and Billy gone home, Skeeter breathing exhausted on the sofa downstairs, Rabbit repeats his question to Jill. "Why have you done this to me?" Jill snuffles, turns over. She is so much lighter than he, she irresistibly rolls down to his side. Often in the morning he wakes to find himself nearly pushed from the bed by this inequality, her sharp little elbows denting his flesh. "He was so pathetic," she explains. "He talks tough, but he really has nothing. He really does want to become the Black Jesus." "Is that why you let him screw you this afternoon, or didn't you?" "I didn't really." "He lied?" Silence. She slides an inch deeper into his side of the bed. "I don't think it counts when you just let somebody do it to you and don't do anything back." "You don't?" "No, it just happens on the surface, a million miles away." "And how about me? Is it the same way? You don't feel anything, it's so far away? So you're really a virgin, aren't you?" "Shh, whisper." "No, I do feel things with you." "What?" She nudges closer, and her arm encircles his thick waist. "I feel you're a funny big teddy bear my daddy has given me. He used to bring home these extravagant stiff toys from Schwartz's in New York, giraffes 6 feet high that cost $500. You couldn't do anything with them. They'd just stand around taking up space. Mother hated them." "Thanks a lot." Sluggishly he rolls over to face her. "Other times, when you're over me, I feel you're an angel, piercing me with a sword. I feel you're about to announce something, the end of the world, and you say nothing, just pierce me. It's beautiful." "Love me?" "Please, Harry. Since that God thing I went through, I just can't focus that way on anybody." "Is Skeeter out of focus for you, too?" "He's horrible. He really is. He feels all scaly. He's so bitter." "Then why in holy hell—" She kisses him to stop his voice. "Shh! He'll hear." Sounds travel freely down the stairs, through the house of thin partitions. The rooms are quadrants of one rustling heart. "Because I must, Harry. Because whatever men ask of me, I must give. I'm not interested in holding anything for myself. It all melts together anyway, you see." "I don't see." "I think you do. Otherwise, why did you let him stay? You had him beaten. You were killing him." "Yeah, that was nice. I thought I was out of shape worse than I am. Yet now he's here. She flattens her body against his. It feels transparent. He can see through her to the blue window beyond, moonlit, giving onto the garage roof, composition shingling manufactured with a strange shadow line to give an illusion of thickness. She confesses, in such a whisper it may only be a thought he overhears, "He frightens me. Me too. Half of me wanted you to kick him out, more than half." "Well," and he smiles unseen, "if he is the next Jesus, we got to keep on his good side." Her body broadens as if smiling. It has grown plain that the betrayals and excitements of the day must resolve into their making love now. He encloses her skull in his hands, caressing the spine-like ridges behind the seashell curve of her ears, palming the broad curve of the whole, this cup sealed upon a spirit. Knowing her love is coming, he sees very clearly, as we see in the etched hour before snow. He amends, "Also, Janice has been doing some things out of the way, so I have to do things out of the way. To pay her back, to keep up with her." The item was narrow measure. Sentenced for possession. 8 local men and 1 woman were given 6-month sentences for possession of marijuana Thursday. The defendants appearing before Judge Milton F. Schoffer had been apprehended in a police raid on Jimbo's Lounge, Weiser Street, early in the morning of August 29th. The female among them, Miss Beatrice Green, a well-known local entertainer under her nom de plume of Babe, had her sentence suspended, with 1 year's probation, as were 4 of the men. 2 minors were remanded to juvenile court. A 10th defendant, Hubert H. Farnsworth, failed to appear in court and forfeited bail. A warrant had been issued for his arrest, and has been issued for his arrest. The proprietor of Jimbo's, Mr. Timothy Cartney of Penn. Rabbit's ears can sense now where Payasek is coming up behind him with a phone call. Something weary and menacing in his step, and then his breath has a sarcastic caress. "Angstrom, maybe we should move your lino into my office, or install a phone jack out here." "I'll give her hell, Ed. This is the last time." "I don't like a man's private life to interfere with his work." "I don't either. I tell you, I'll tell her." "Do that, Harry. Do that for good old verity. We have a team here. We're in a highly competitive game. Let's keep up our end. What do you say?" Behind the frosted walls, he says into the phone, "Janice, this is the last time. I won't come to the phone after this. I won't be calling you after this, Harry. After this, all our communications will be through lawyers." "How come?" "How come? How come? How come? Come on, just give me information, can you? I gotta get back to the machine." "Well, for one reason, how come? You've let me sit over here without ever once calling me back. And for another, you've taken a darky into the house along with that hippie. You're incredible, Harry. My mother always said it. He means no harm. He just has less moral sense than a skunk. And she was right." "He's just there a couple of days. It's a funny kind of emergency." "It must be funny. It must be hilarious. Does your mother know? So help me, I have a mind to call and tell her." "Who told you, anyway? He never goes out of the house." He hopes by his reasonable tone to bring hers down. She does unwind a notch. "Peggy Fosnacht. She said Billy came home absolutely bug-eyed. He said the man was on the living-room floor, and the first thing he said was to insult Billy. It wasn't meant as an insult. It was meant to be pleasant." "Well, I wish I could be pleasant. I wish it very much. I've seen a lawyer, and we're filing a writ for immediate custody of Nelson. The divorce will follow. As the guilty party, you can't remarry for 2 years. "Absolutely, Harry. I'm sorry. I thought we were more mature than this. I hated the lawyer. The whole thing is too ugly." "Yeah, well, the law is. It serves a ruling elite. More power to the people." "I think you've lost your mind. I honestly do." "Hey, what did you mean I let you sit over there? I thought that was what you wanted. Isn't Stavros still doing the sitting with you?" "You might at least have fought a little," she cries and gasps for breath between sobs. "You're so weak, so wishy-washy," she manages to bring out. But then it becomes pure animal sound, a kind of cooing or wheezing, as if all the air is running out of her, so he says, "We'll talk later. Call me at home," and hangs up to plug the leak. Park expressed shock and strong disapproval of drug use over the telephone to VAT inquiries. Courtney was not in the building at the time of the arrests. Rumors have prevailed for some time concerning the sale of this well-known night spot and gathering place to a black capitalist syndicate. During the coffee break, Buchanan comes over. Rabbit touches his wallet, wonders if the touch will go up. Escalation, foreign aid, welfare. He'll refuse if it does. If he asks more than 20, let them riot in the streets. But Buchanan holds out 2 $10 bills, not the same two, but just as good. "Friend Harry," he says, "never let it be said no black man pays his debts. I'm obliged to you 1,001 times over. Them 2 sawbucks turned the cards right around. Would you believe 2 natural full houses in a row? I couldn't believe it myself. Nobody could. Those fools all stayed the second time like there was no tomorrow." He wads the money into Rabbit's hand, which is slow to close. "Thanks, Lester. I didn't really expect to get it back. Not so soon." "Well, sometimes one man's in need, sometimes another man is. Spread it around. Isn't that what the great ones teach us?" "I guess they do. I haven't talked to many great ones lately." Buchanan chuckles politely and rolls back and forth on his heels, estimating, rolling a toothpick in his lips, beneath a mustache no thicker than a toothpick. "I hear tell you're so hard up over at your place you're taking in boarders." "Oh, that. It's just temporary. It wasn't my idea." "I believe that." I'd rather it didn't get around." "That's just what I'd rather." Change the subject somehow. "How's Babe now? Back in business?" "What kind of business you think she's in?" "You know, singing. I meant after the bust and court sentence. I just set the news item." "I know what you meant. I know exactly. Come on down to Jimbo's any night of the week. Get better acquainted. Babe's estimation of you is shot way up, I tell you that. Not that she didn't take a shine in the first place." "Yeah, okay, great. Maybe I'll get down sometime, if I can get a babysitter." The idea of ever going into Jimbo's again frightens him, as does the idea of leaving Nelson, Jill, and Skeeter alone in the house. He is sinking into an underworld he used to see only from a bus. Buchanan squeezes his arm. "We'll set something up," the Negro promises. "Oh, yes." The hand squeezes tighter as if pressing fingerprints through the screen of Harry's blue work shirt. "Jerome asked me to express an especial gratitude." "Jerome?" The yellow-faced clock ticks, the end of brake buzzer rasps. The last to return to his machine, Farnsworth passes between the brightly lit makeup tables, a man so black he twinkles. He bobs his shaved head, wipes the whiskey from his lips, and throws Harry a dazzling grin. Brothers in paternity. He gets off the bus early on the other side of the bridge and walks along the river through the old brick neighborhoods burdened with great green highway signs. Peggy Fosnacht's buzzer buzzes back, and when he gets off the elevator, she is at the door in a shapeless blue bathrobe. "Oh, you," she says. "I thought it would be Billy, having lost his key again." "You alone?" "Yes, but Harry, he'll be back from school any minute." "I only need a minute." She leads him in, pulling her bathrobe tighter about her body. He tries to wrap his errand in a little courtesy. "How have you been?" "I'm managing. How have you been?" "Managing, just. Would you like a drink? This early in the day?" "I'm having one." "No, Peggy, thanks. I can only stay a minute. I gotta see what's cooking back at the ranch." "Quite a lot, I hear." "That's what I wanted to say something about." "Please sit down. I'm getting a crick in my neck." Peggy takes a sparkling glass of beaded fluid from the sill of the window that overlooks Brewer, a swamp of brick sunk at the foot of its mountain basking westward in the sun. She sips, and her eyes slide by. "You're offended by my drinking. I just got out of the bathtub. That's often how I spend my afternoons, after spending the morning with the lawyers or walking the streets looking for a job. Everybody wants younger secretaries. They must wonder why I keep my sunglasses on. I come back and take off all my clothes and get into the tub and ever so slowly put a drink inside me and watch the steam melt the ice cubes. It sounds nice. What I wanted to say... She is standing by the window with one hip pushed out. The belt of her bathrobe is loose, and though she is a shadow against the bright, colorless sky, he can feel with his eyes, as if with his tongue, the hollow between her breasts that would still be dewy from her bath. She prompts, "What you wanted to say?" "Was to ask you a favor. Could you kind of keep it quiet about the Negro staying with us that Billy saw? Janice called me today, and I guess you've already told her. That's okay. If you could stop it there. I don't want everybody to know. Don't tell Ollie, if you haven't already, I mean. There's a legal angle, or I wouldn't bother." He lifts his hands helplessly. It wasn't worth saying now that he's said it. Peggy steps toward him, stabbingly, too much liquor, or trying to keep the hip out seductively, or just the way she sees, two of everything, and tells him she must be an awfully good lay to get you to do this for her. "The girl?" "No, actually, she and I aren't usually on the same wavelength." She brushes back her hair with an approximate flicking motion that lifts the bathrobe lapel and exposes one breast. She is drunk. "Try another wavelength." "Yeah, I'd love to. But right now the fact is I'm running too scared to take on anything else. And anyway, Billy's about to come home. Sometimes he hangs around Burger Bliss for hours. Ollie tells me he's getting bad habits. Yeah, how is old Ollie? You and he getting together at all?" She lets her hand down from her hair. The lapel covers her again. "Sometimes he comes by and fucks me, but it doesn't seem to bring us any closer. Probably it does, he just doesn't express it. He's too embarrassed at having hurt you. That's how you would be. But Ollie isn't like that. It would never enter his head to feel guilty. It's the artist in him. You know, he really can play almost any instrument he picks up. But he's a cold little bastard. Yeah, I'm kind of cold, too." He has stood in alarm since she has come closer another clumsy step. Peggy says, "Give me your hands." Her eyes fork upon him, around him. Her face unchanging, she reaches down and lifts his hands from his sides and holds them to her chest. They're warm, he thinks, cold heart. She inserts his left hand into her bathrobe and presses it around a breast. He thinks of spilling guts, of a cow's stomach tumbling out. Elastically, she overflows his fingers, her nipple a clot, a gumdrop stuck to his palm. Her eyes are closed, veins in her lids, crow's feet at the corners, and she is intoning, "You're not cold. You're warm. You're a warm man, Harry, a good man. You've been hurt, and I want you to heal. I want to help you heal. Do whatever you want with me." She is talking as if to herself, rapidly, softly, but has brought him so close he hears it all. Her breath beats at the base of his throat. Her heartbeat is sticking to his palm. The skin of her brow is vexed, and the piece of her body her bathrobe discloses is lumpy and strange. Blind like the brow of an ox, but eased by liquor, she has slid into that state where the body of the other is her own body, the body of secretive self-love, that the mirror we fill and the bed we warm alone give us back. And he is enclosed in this body of love of hers, and against all thought and wish he thickens all over tenderly, and the one-eyed rising beneath his waist begins. He protests, "I'm not good," but is also sliding. He relaxes the hand that is holding her breast to give it air to sway in. She insists, "You're good, you're lovely," and fumbles at his fly. With the free hand he pulls aside the lapel of the bathrobe so the other breast is free, and the bathrobe belt falls unknotted. An elevator door sucks shut in the hall. Footsteps swell toward their door. They spring apart. Peggy wraps the robe around herself again. He keeps on his retinas the after-image of a ferny triangle broader than his palm beneath a belly whiter than crystal, with silvery stretch marks. The footsteps pass on by. The lovers sigh with relief, but the spell has been broken. Peggy turns her back, reknots her belt. "You're keeping in touch with Janice?" she says. "Not really. How did you know I told her about the black?" "Funny, everybody else has no trouble saying black, or hating the war. Rabbit must be defective, lobotomy. A pit opens where guilt gnaws at the edge of his bladder. He must hurry home. She called me to say a lawyer was starting divorce proceedings. Does that upset you? I guess, sort of, sure. I suppose I'm dumb. I just never understood why you put up with Janice. She was never enough for you, never. I love Janice, but she is about the most childish, least sensitive woman I've ever known. You sound like my mother. Is that bad? She whirls around. Her hair floats. He has never seen Peggy so suddenly soft, so womanly frontal. Even her eyes he could take. In play, mocking the pressure of Billy impending at his back, he rubs the back of his hand across her nipples. Nibs and dots. Maybe you're right. We should try out our wavelengths. Peggy flushes, backs off, looks stony, as if an unexpected mirror has shown her herself too harshly. She pulls the blue terry cloth around her so tight her shoulders huddle. If you want to take me out to dinner some night, she says, I'm around, adding irritably, but don't count your chickens. Hurry, hurry. The bus takes forever to come. The walk down Emberley is endless. Yet his house, third from the end of Vista Crescent, low and new and a sullen apple green on the quarter-acre of lawn scraggly with plantain, is intact, and all around it the unpopulated stretches of similar houses hold unbroken the intensity of duplication. That the blot of black inside his house is unmirrored fools him into hoping it isn't there. But once up the 3 porch steps and through the door of 3 stepped windows, Rabbit sees to his right in the living room from behind, the sofa having been swung around, a bushy black sphere between Jill's cone of strawberry gold and Nelson's square-cut mass of Janice dark hair. They are watching television. Skeeter seems to have reinstated the box. The announcer, ghostly pale because the adjustment is too bright, and mouthing as rapidly as a vampire because there is too much news between too many commercials, enunciates, after a 5-year exile spent in communist Cuba, various African states and communist China, landed in Detroit today and was instantly taken into custody by waiting FBI men. Elsewhere on the racial front, the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights sharply charged that the Nixon administration has made, quote, a major retreat, unquote, pertaining to school integration in the southern states. In Fayette, Mississippi, 3 white Klansmen were arrested for the attempted bombing of the supermarket owned by newly elected black mayor of Fayette, Charles Evers, brother of the slain civil rights leader. In New York City, Episcopal spokesmen declined to defend further their controversial decision to grant $200,000 toward black church leader James Foreman's demand of $500 million in, quote, reparations, unquote, from the Christian churches in America for, quote, 3 centuries of indignity and exploitation, unquote. In Hartford, Connecticut and Camden, New Jersey, an uneasy peace prevails after last week's disturbances within the black communities of these cities. And now an important announcement. Hello. Hello, Rabbit says, ignored. Nelson turns and says, Hey, Dad, Robert Williams is back in this country. Who the hell is Robert Williams? Skeeter says, Chuck, baby, he's a man going to fry your ass. Another black Jesus? How many of you are there? By many false prophets, Skeeter tells him, you shall know my coming, right? That's the good book, right? It also says he's come and gone. Coming again, Chuck. Gonna fry your ass. You and Nixon's, right? Poor old Nixon. Even his own commission beat on him. What the hell can he do? He can't go into every ghetto and fix the plumbing himself. He can't give every copped-out junkie $1 million and a Ph.D. Nixon? Who's Nixon? He's just a typical flat-footed Chamber of Commerce type who lucked his way into the hot seat and is so dumb he thinks it's good luck. Let the poor bastard alone. He's trying to bore us to death so we won't commit suicide. Nixon shit. That honky was put there by the cracker vote, right? Strom's stormtrooper is his very bag. He is Herod, man, and all us black babies better believe it. Black babies, black leaders. Jesus, am I sick of the word black. If I said white 1/80th as often as you say black, you'd scream yourself blue. For Christ's sake, forget your skin. I'll forget it when you forget it, right? Lord, I'd love to forget not only your skin, but everything inside it. I thought 3 days ago you said you were getting out in 3 days. Dad, don't. The kid's face is tense. Mom was right, too. delicate, too nervous. Thinks the world is going to hurt him, so it will. The universal instinct to exterminate the weak. Jill rises to shield the other two. 3-on-1. Rabbit is exhilarated. Faking and dodging, he says before she can speak, "Tell the darker of your boyfriends here I thought he promised to pull out when he got a steak. I have $20 here to give him, which reminds me of something else." Skeeter interrupts, addressing the air. "I love him when he gets like this. He is the man." And Jill is saying her piece. "Nelson and I refuse to live with this quarreling. Tonight after supper we want to have an organized discussion. There's a crying need for education in this household." "Household," Rabbit says. "I'd call it a refugee camp." He persists in what he has been reminded of. "Hey, Skeeter, do you have a last name?" "X," Skeeter tells him. 42X. "Sure it's not Farnsworth?" Skeeter's body sheds its shell, hangs there out-fainted a second before regathering hardness. "That Super Tom," he says definitely, "is not the slightest relation of mine." "The Vat had your last name as Farnsworth." "The Vat," Skeeter pronounces mincingly, "is a fascist rag." Having scored, you put your head down and run back up the floor, but with that feeling inside of having made a mark that can't be rubbed out. "Just wondering," Rabbit smiles. "Who wants a beer besides me?" After supper, Nelson washes the dishes and Skeeter dries. Jill tidies up the living room for their discussion. Rabbit helps her swing the sofa back into place. On the shelves between the living room and the breakfast nook that he and Janice had kept empty, Rabbit notices now a stack of tired paperbacks, their spines chafed and biased by handling. The selected writings of W.E.B. Du Bois, The Wretched of the Earth, Soul on Ice, The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass, others, history, Marx, economics, stuff that makes Rabbit feel sick, as when he thinks about what surgeons do, or all the plumbing and gas lines there are under the street. "Skeeter's books," Jill explains. "I went into Jimbo's today for them and his clothes. Babe had them." "Hey, Chuck," Skeeter calls from the sink through the shelves. "Know where I got those books?" "Over in Nam, at the Long Bend Base Bookstore. They love us to read, that crazy army of yours. Teach us how to read, shoot, dig pot, sniff skag, black man's best friend, just like they say." He snaps his towel. "Pap." Rabbit ignores him and asks Jill, "You went in there? It's full of police. They could easy tail you." Skeeter shouts from the kitchen, "Don't you worry, Chuck. Those poor pigs have bigger niggers than me to fry. You know what happened over in York, right? Brewer's gone to make that look like the Ladies' Aid Ball." "Pap." Nelson, washing beside him, asks, "Will they shoot every white person?" "Just the big old ugly ones, mostly. You stay away from that gruesome Billy and stick next to me, Baby Chuck. You'll be all right." Rabbit pulls down a book at random and reads, "Government is for the people's progress, and not for the comfort of an aristocracy. The object of industry is the welfare of the workers, and not the wealth of the owners. The object of civilization is the cultural progress of the mass of workers, and not merely of an intellectual elite." It frightens him, as museums used to frighten him, when it was part of school to take trips there and to see the mummy rotting in his casket of gold, the elephant tusk filed into 100 squinting Chinamen. Unthinkably distant lives, abysses of existence, worse than what crawls blind on ocean floors. "Wake, awake, put on thy strength, O Zion. Reject the weakness of missionaries who teach neither love nor brotherhood, but chiefly the virtues of private profit from capital, stolen from your land and labor. Africa, awake, put on the beautiful robes of Pan-African socialism." Rabbit replaces the book feeling better. There are no such robes. It is all crap. "What's the discussion about?" he asks as they settle around the cobbler's bench. Jill says nervously, blushing, "Skeeter and Nelson and I were talking about it today after school, and agreed that since there seems to be such a painful communications problem—" "Is that what it is?" Rabbit asks. "Maybe we communicate too well. A structured discussion might be helpful and educational." "Me being the one who needs to be educated," Rabbit says. "Not necessarily." The care with which Jill speaks makes Rabbit feel pity. We are too much for her, he thinks. "You're older than we are, and we respect your experience. We all agree, I think, that your problem is that you've never been given a chance to formulate your views. Because of the competitive American context, you've had to convert everything into action too rapidly. Your life has no reflective content. It's all instinct. And when your instincts let you down, you have nothing to trust. That's what makes you cynical. Cynicism, it has been said, is tired pragmatism. Pragmatism suited a certain moment here, the frontier moment. It did the work, very wastefully and ruthlessly, but it did it. On behalf of Daniel Boone, Rabbit says, I thank you. It's wrong, Jill goes on gently, when you say Americans are exploiters, to forget that the first things they exploit are themselves. You, she says, lifting her face, her eyes and freckles and nostrils a constellation, you've never given yourself a chance to think except on techniques, basketball and printing, that served a self-exploitative purpose. You carry an old God with you, and an angry old patriotism, and now an old wife. He takes breath to protest, but her hand begs him to let her finish. You accept these things as sacred, not out of love or faith, but fear. Your thought is frozen because the first moment when your instincts failed, you raced to the conclusion that everything is nothing, that zero is the real answer. That is what we Americans think. It's win or lose, all or nothing, kill or die, because we've never created the leisure in which to take thought. But now, you see, we must, because action is no longer enough. Action without thought is violence, as we see in Vietnam. He at last can speak. There was violence in Vietnam before we ever heard of the place. You can see by just the way I'm sitting here listening to this crap, I'm a pacifist, basically. He points at Skeeter. He's the violent son of a bitch. But you see, Jill says, her voice lulling and nagging with just a teasing, ragged hem showing of the voice she uses in bed, the reason Skeeter annoys and frightens you is he's opaque. You don't know a thing about his history. I don't mean his personal history so much as the history of his race, how he got here. Things that threaten you like riots and welfare have jumped into the newspapers out of nowhere for you. So for tonight we thought we would just talk a little, have a kind of seminar about Afro-American history. Please, Dad, Nelson says. Jesus, okay, hit me. We were beastly to the slaves, so why do so few American Negroes want to give up their Cadillacs and, excuse the expression, colored televisions and go back to Africa? Dad, don't. Skeeter begins. Let's forget the slavery, Chuck. It was forever ago. Everybody used to do it. It was a country kind of thing, right? Though I must say the more it began to smell like shit, the tighter you held on to it, right? We had more country. Easy, sit back, no arguments, right? You had cotton come along, right? Anybody but darkies die working those cotton swamps, right? Anywho, you had this war. You had these crazies up north like Garrison and Brown agitating, and down south a bunch of supercrackers like Yancey and Rhett, who thought they could fatten their own pie by splitting. Funny thing is, he chuckles, wheezes. Rabbit pictures him with a shaved head and sees Farnsworth. They didn't. The Confederacy sent 'em away on a ship and elected all play-it-safes to office. Same up north with cats like Sumner. Come to the vote, people scared of the man with the idea, right? Do you know, suppose you don't, dude called Ruffin, bright as could be, invented modern agriculture, or next thing to it, hated the Yankees so much he pulled the string on the first cannon at Sumter and shot himself in the head when the South lost. Wild men, beautiful, right? So anywho, Lincoln got this war, right? And fought it for a bunch of wrong reasons. What's so sacred about a union? Just a power trust, right? And for another wrong reason, freed the slaves, and it was done. God bless America, right? So here I begin to get mad. Get mad, Skeeter, Rabbit says. Who wants a beer? Me, Dad. Half a one. Jill says, I'll split it with him. Skeeter says, that stuff rots the soul. Mind if I burn some good red? It's not legal. Right. But everybody does it. All those swish cats over in Penn Park. You think they have a martini when they come home at night? That's yesterday. They blow grass. Sincerely, it is more in than chewing gum. Over in Nam it was the fightin' boys' candy. Okay, light up. I guess we've gone this far. "There is far to go," Skeeter says, rolling his joint from a rubber pouch he produces from within the sofa where he sleeps, and thin yellow paper, licking it rapidly with that fat, pale tongue and twisting the ends. When he lights it, the twisted end flames. He sucks in hungrily, holds it in as if about to dive very deep, and then releases the sweet used smoke with a belch. He offers the wet end to Rabbit. "Try?" Rabbit shakes his head, watching Nelson. The kid's eyes are bird-bright, watching Skeeter. Maybe Janice is right. He's letting the kid see too much. Still, he didn't do the leaving, and life is life. God invented it, not him. But he looks at Nelson, fearful that his presence in the room will be construed as a blessing. He says to Skeeter, "Get on with your song. Lincoln won the war for the wrong reasons." "And then he was shot, right?" Skeeter passes the joint to Jill. As she takes it, her eyes ask Rabbit, "Is that what you want?" She holds it the way the experts do, not like a tobacco cigarette, something for Fred Astaire to gesture with, but reverently as food, with as many fingers as she can get around it, feeding the wet end to herself like a nipple. Her thin face goes peaceful, puts on the fat of dreams. Skeeter is saying, "So then you had these 4 million freed slaves without property or jobs, and this economy dead on its feet, thinking the hallelujah days had come. Green pastures, right? 40 acres and a mule, right? Goddamn green pickles, Chuck. That was the most pathetic thing, the way those poor niggers jumped for the bait. They taught themselves to read, they broke their backs for chicken shit, they sent good men to the fuckhead U.S. Senate, they set up legislatures, giving Dixie the first public schools it ever had. How about that now? There's a fact for your education, right? Jill, honey, hand that stick back. You're going to blow yourself to the moon. That is uncut red. And all this here while, Chuck and Baby Chuck, the crackers down there were frothing at the mouth and calling our black heroes baboons. Couldn't do much else as long as the Northern armies hung around, right? Baboons, monkeys, apes, these hopeful, sweet blacks trying to make men of themselves, thinking they'd be called to be men at last in these benighted states of America." Skeeter's face is shedding its shell of scorn and writhing as if to cry. He has taken his glasses off. He is reaching toward Jill for the marijuana cigarette, keeping his eyes on Rabbit's face. Rabbit is frozen, his mind racing. This book is continued at this point on the other side of this cassette. Rabbit is frozen, his mind racing. Nelson put him to bed, seeing too much. His own face, as he listens to Skeeter, feels weak, shapeless, slipping. The beer tastes bad, of malt. Skeeter wants to cry, to yell. He is sitting on the edge of the sofa and making gestures so brittle his arms might snap off. He is crazy. So what did the South do? They said baboon, and lynched, and whipped, and cheated the black man of what pennies he had, and thanked their white Jesus they didn't have to feed him anymore. And what did the North do? It copped out. It pulled out. It had put on all that muscle for the war, and now it was wading into the biggest, happiest muck of greed and graft and exploitation and pollution and slum building and Indian killing this poor old whore of a planet has ever been saddled with, right? Don't go sleepy on me, Chuck. Here comes the interesting part. The Southern assholes got together with the Northern assholes and said, "Let's us do a deal. What's all this about democracy? Let's have a dollarcracy." Why'd we ever care, free versus slave? Capital versus labor, that's where it's at, right? This poor cunt of a country's the biggest jam pot's ever come along, so let's eat it, friend. You screw your black labor, and we'll screw our immigrant honky and Mongolian idiot labor, and whoo-wee, hallelujah, right? So the Freedman's Bureau was trash, and the military governors were chased back by crackers on horses who were very big on cutting up colored girls with babies inside 'em, and Tilden was cheated out of the presidency in the one bona fide swindle election you can find, admitted in every honky history book. Look it up, right? And that was the revolution of 1876. Far as the black man goes, that's the 76 that hurt. The one 100 years before was just a bunch of English gents dodging taxes. Skeeter has put his glasses back on. The glass circles glitter behind a blueness of smoke. His voice has settled for irony again. So let's all sing America the Beautiful, right? North and west, robber barons and slums. Down south, one big nigger barbecue. Hitler, bless his sweet soul, leastways tried to keep the ovens out of sight. Down Dixie way, every magnolia had a rope. Man, they passed laws if a nigger sneezed within 3 miles of a white ass, his balls were chewed off by saw-toothed beagles. Some nigger didn't hop off the sidewalk and lick up the tobacco juice whenever the town trash spit. He was tucked into a chain gang and peddled to the sheriff's brother-in-law cheaper than an alligator egg. And if he dared to ask for the vote the 15th Amendment had flat out given him, why, they couldn't think up ways to skin him slowly enough. They couldn't invent enough laws to express their disapprobation. Better for a poor black man to go stick his head up Great Aunt Lily's snatch than try to stick it in a polling booth, right? Chuck, I gotta hand it to you. You had it all ways. The South got slavery back at half the price. It got control of Congress back by counting the black votes that couldn't be cast. The North got the cotton money it needed for capital, and everybody got the fun of shitting on the black man and then holding their noses. You believe any of this? I believe all of it, Rabbit says. Do you believe? Do you believe I'm so mad just telling this? If I had a knife right now, I'd poke it in your throat and watch that milk-white blood come out, and would love it. Oh, would I love it. Skeeter is weeping. Tears and smoke mix on the skin of his face. Okay, Rabbit says. Skeeter, don't cry, Nelson says. Skeeter, it was too rich. I'm going to lose it, Jill says and stands. I'm dizzy. But Skeeter will talk only to Harry. What I want to say to you, he says, what I want to make ever so clear, Chuck, is you had that chance. You could have gone some better road, right? You took that greedy turn, right? You sold us out, right? You sold yourselves out. Like Lincoln said, you paid in blood, sword for the lash and all that, and you didn't lift us up. We held out our hands, man. We were like faithful dogs waiting for that bone, but you gave us a kick. You put us down. You put us down. Skeeter, please don't ever give me any more of that, whatever it was. Ever, ever, Jill says, drifting away. Skeeter controls his crying, lifts his face darkened in streaks like ashes wetted down. It wasn't just us. You sold yourselves out, right? You really had it here. You had it all. And you took that greedy, mucky road, man. You made yourself the asshole of the planet, right? To keep that capitalist thing rolling, you let those asshole crackers have their way. And now use all asshole crackers. North and south, however you look, there's assholes. You lapped up the poison, and now it shows, Chuck. You say America to you, and you still get bugles and stars. But say it to any black or yellow man, and you get hate, right? Man, the world does hate you. You're the big pig keeping it all down. He jabs blearily with his skinny finger and hangs his head. From upstairs, discreet as the noise a cat makes catching a bird, comes a squeezed, heaving noise, Jill being sick. Nelson asks, Dad, shouldn't you call a doctor? She'll be okay. Go to bed. You have school tomorrow. Skeeter looks at Rabbit. His eyeballs are fiery and rheumy. I said it, right? Trouble with your line, Rabbit tells him. It's pure self-pity. The real question is, where do you go from here? We all got here on a bad boat. You talk as if the whole purpose of this country since the start has been to frustrate Negroes. Hell, you're just 10%. The fact is most people don't give a damn what you do. This is the freest country around. Make it if you can. If you can't, die gracefully. But Jesus, stop begging for a free ride. Friend, you are wrong. You are white, but wrong. We fascinate you, white man. We are in your dreams. We are technology's nightmare. We are all the good, satisfied nature you put down in yourselves when you took that mucky, greedy turn. We are what has been left out of the Industrial Revolution, so we are the next revolution. And don't you know it? You know it. Why else you so scared of me, Rabbit? Because you're a spook. I'm going to bed. Skeeter rolls his head loosely, touches it dubiously. In the light from the driftwood lamp, his round mass of hair is seen as insubstantial, his skull narrow as the bone handle of a knife. He brushes at his forehead as if midges are there. He says, Sweet dreams. I'm too spaced to sleep right now. I got just to sit here, nursing the miseries. Mind if I play the radio if I keep it low? No. Upstairs, Jill, a sudden warm wisp in his arms, begs with rapid breath, "Get him out of here, Harry. Don't let him stay. He's no good for me. No good for any of us." "You brought him here." He takes her talk as the exaggerating that children do, to erase their fears by spelling them out. And indeed, in 5 minutes, she is dead asleep, motionless. The electric clock burns beyond her head like a small moon's skeleton. Downstairs, a turned-down radio faintly scratches, and shortly Rabbit, too, is asleep. Strangely, he sleeps soundly, with Skeeter in the house. "Harry, how about a quick one?" His father tells the bartender as always, "Let's make it a Schlitz." "Whiskey sour," he says. Summer is over. The air conditioning in the Phoenix has been turned off. He asks, "How's Mom doing?" "As good as can be hoped, Harry." He nudges a conspiratorial inch closer. "That new stuff really seems to do the job. She's on her feet for hours at a time now. For my money, though, the $64,000 question is what the long-range effects will be." The doctor, he's perfectly honest about it. He says to her when we go on into the hospital, "How's my favorite guinea pig?" "What's the answer?" Rabbit abruptly asks. His father is startled. Her answer? Anybody's. His father now understands the question and shrugs his narrow shoulders in their clean white shirt. "Blind faith," he suggests. In a mutter he adds, "One more bastard under the ground." On the television above the bar, men are filing past a casket, but the sound is turned off, and Rabbit cannot tell if it is Everett Dirkson's lying in state in Washington or Ho Chi Minh's ceremonies in Hanoi. Dignitaries look alike, always dressed in mourning. His father clears his throat, breaks the silence. "Janice called your mother last night." "Boy, I think she's cracking up. She's on the phone all the time. Stavros must be losing his muscle." "She was very disturbed. She said you'd taken a colored man into your house." "I didn't exactly take him. He kind of showed up. Nobody's supposed to know about it. I think he's Farnsworth's son." "That can't be. Jerry's never married, to my knowledge." "They don't marry, generally, right?" "They weren't allowed to as slaves." This bit of historical information makes Earl Angstrom grimace. He takes what for him with his boy is a tough line. "I must say, Harry, I'm not too happy about it either." The funeral, the flag on the coffin has stars and stripes, so it must be Dirkson's, vanishes, and flickering in its place are shots of cannons blasting, of trucks moving through the desert, of planes soundlessly batting through the sky, of soldiers waving. He cannot tell if they are Israeli or Egyptian. He asks, "How happy is Mom about it?" "I must say she was very short with Janice. Suggested if she wanted to run your household, she'd go back to it. Said she had no right to complain. I don't know what all else. I couldn't bear to listen. When women get to quarreling, I head for the hills." "Janice talk about lawyers?" "Your mother didn't mention it, if she did. Between you and me, Harry, she was so upset it scared me. I don't believe she slept more than 2-3 hours. She took twice the dose of Seconal, and still it couldn't knock her out. She's worried, and pardon my crust for horning in where I have no business, Harry, so am I." "Worried about what?" "Worried about this new development. Now, I'm no nigger-hater. I'm happy to work with 'em, and I have for 20 years. If needs be, I'll live next to 'em, though the fact is they haven't cracked Mount Judge yet. But get any closer than that, you're playing with fire, in my experience." "What experience?" "They'll let you down," Pop says. "They don't have any feeling of obligation. I'm not blaming a soul, but that's the fact. They'll let you down and laugh about it afterwards. They're not like white men, and there's no use saying they are. You asked me what experience? I don't want to go into stories, though there's plenty I could tell. Just remember, I was raised in the 3rd Ward when it was more white than black. We mixed it up in every sense. I know the people of this county. They're good-natured people. They like to eat and drink and like to have their red light district and their numbers. They'll elect the scum to political office time and time again. But they don't like seeing their women desecrated." "Who's being desecrated?" "Just that menagerie over there. The way you're keeping it is a desecration. Have you heard from your neighbors what they think about it yet?" "I don't even know my neighbors." "That black boy shows his face outside. You'll get to know them. You'll get to know them as sure as I'm standing here trying to be a friend and not a father. The day when I could whip sense into you is long by, Harry. And anyway, you gave us a lot less trouble than Mim. Your mother always says you let people push you around, and I always answer her. Harry knows his way around. He lands on his feet. But I'm beginning to see she may be right. Your mother may be all crippled up, but she's still hard to fool. Ask the man who's tried. When did you try? But this secret, had Pop played Mom false? Stays damned behind those loose false teeth the old man's mouth keeps adjusting, pensively sucking. Instead, he says, "Do us a favor, Harry. I hate like hell to beg, but do us a favor and come over tonight and talk about it. Your mother's stiff-armed Janice, but I know when she's been shook. Not tonight, I can't. Maybe in a couple of days things will clear up." "Why not, Harry? We promised not to grill you or anything. Lord, I wouldn't ask for myself. It's your mother's state of mind. You know," and he slides so close their white sleeves touch, and Rabbit smells the sour fog of his father's breath, "she's having the adventure now we're all going to have. Stop asking, Pop. I can't right now." "They've got you in their clutches, huh?" He stands straight, decides one whiskey sour will do, and answers, "Right." That night after supper, they discuss slavery. Jill and Skeeter have done the dishes together. Rabbit has helped Nelson with his homework. The kid is into algebra this year, but can't quite manage that little flip in his head whereby a polynomial cracks open into two nice equalities of x, 1 minus and 1 plus. Rabbit had been good at math. It was a game with limits, with orderly movements and a promise of completion at the end. The combination always cracked open. Nelson is tight about it, afraid to let go and swing. A smart kid, but tight, afraid of maybe that